Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien and Bubba here on the morning of Friday, April 23rd, 2021, TGIF. And we're sitting in for Paul Harvey this morning. Stand by for commentary. Well, Americans, if Mr. Paul Harvey were alive today, he would do a commentary similar to this based on the last 24 hours. And he would say, well, Americans, we live in a strange times, this times that we live, especially the last 4 months of 2021. We've had over 60 shootings now. Closer to 200 if you add all the other small shootings, but we've had over 60 shootings and stabbings. Nobody's taking care of those. Strangulations and husbands and killing wives, wives killing husbands. If you add all those up, our killings are probably over 300 in the last 4 months. And to give you an example, yesterday, there was another shooting in North Carolina where a police officer was serving a warrant. And like the alien here has tried to tell you, and maybe I have to come back from my grave to tell you, the problem is all around. Everybody is guilty here. The problem in North Carolina could have been long avoided, just like the problem with Mr. Wright could have been avoided in Brookline Center, Minnesota. They both had the same thing in common: warrants. The person in North Carolina absolutely knew that he had a warrant against him and that the police would come to serve it. His family members must have known he had a warrant, just like the family members and the Wright family knew that he had not one, but 2 warrants against him. So this isn't victimizing the African Americans, okay? And like the alien told you, yes, the policing force has problems that has to be ironed out, but you have to iron out your societal problems first. You can't legislate police departments, and that's what you're trying to do. Legislate police departments or defund the police. That's not the answer. The answer is you as a people. The problem in North Carolina could have been long avoided. No shootings, no serving of the warrants. And yes, the judicial system is biased. But that has to be dealt with at a community level, a social level, not through protest and speeches and marches and destroying property. Because what you're doing is creating more hate and more anger. The guy in North Carolina should have gone to the local district attorney. And I know North Carolina as a state, okay? It's a southern state, which treat African Americans not quite good. But this is why you got things like the NAACP and the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. Do you hear me, African Americans, and all you other dum-dums? Because I gotta call you dum-dums. Mr. Alien over here calls you, you don't got watermelons for brains. And he's right. But hear me, Americans. When I was alive, I loved this nation with all the passion, and you can hear it in my programs. Now hear me now from the grave, through Mr. Alien here. This problem could have been avoided. Your family from North Carolina, like the family from Mr. Wright over there in Brookline Center, Minnesota, could have taken both Mr. Wright and this other fellow from North Carolina to the district attorney's office. And mind you, Minnesota is not as bad as North Carolina. But at least you would have representation. Get yourself an ACLU lawyer or an NAACP. But what are they good for? Agitating like Sharpton and Jesse Jackson? And Mr. Alien is right. They have done nothing to put the Reverend on their name and being of the faith. They have destroyed the name of the faith. What we need is faith here. Faith in the Supreme Being, which I'm with at the moment. And he told me to tell you, it's time to stop your grievances. It's time to stop your hate and your anger. It's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to give up a lot. That's why he gave you free will. You have the free will to do this. But are you going to do it? Hell no. So, this other thing that's happened in North Carolina, like the one in Brookline Center, Minnesota, are unlike Mr. Floyd. Mr. Floyd had issues and Mr. Chauvin had issues. But the officer in Minnesota and the officer here in North Carolina did not have those issues. They had issues of policing, mistraining, and perception issues that you have. They perceive you one way, you perceive them another way. This is the problem. Perception and mistraining. Mr. Chauvin wasn't. Mr. Chauvin was an issue personally with him. And there's a difference there. But you guys don't see it because you got hate and anger. Why? Where was the family of the guy from North Carolina? And this is what I'm saying to the family and the guy, Mr. Wright from Brookline Center, Massachusetts. Where were you? You know you had 2 warrants for Mr. Wright. And that sooner or later, when a police officer would stop him for one thing or another, the warrant would come up. And in the case of the police officer, she used the perception problem. Oh, it's an African American in the car. He's got 2 warrants. I got to pull my weapon out. Instead of just saying, sir, you don't want to come with me? That's okay. Here's your ticket. And by the way, I'll be calling my precinct because you got tickets and warrants against you. A bench warrant, which means automatically arrest. I cannot arrest you because I got a lot of bystanders here. You're driving in a car, and I don't want to see this thing escalate where you lose your life or I lose my life. Please report. If you don't like the police, report to your local district attorney's office. Same thing with the guy in North Carolina. The alien here has been trying to tell you these. But what do I have to do? Ask Mr. JC if I can come back and do the same thing that I used to do with my local commentaries. In my time, the people didn't listen. And you guys seem to have cobwebs in your ears. So anyway, this is what I have to say. Well, Americans, this is what Mr. Paul Harvey would have said. And I wholeheartedly support him. You guys, I say, you guys still have watermelons in your brains. He says you got cobwebs in your ears. Yeah. Oh, well. But see, the issue with the guy in North Carolina, it's not as simple as a policeman shooting a black guy. There's more issues to hear. The warrant issue. The police have problems with perception and assumptions about black people. The black people have problems with assumptions to the police. All you have to do is mitigate this at the butt, and you would have had no shooting or killings. Mr. Wright would have been alive. Mrs. Taylor, Breonna Taylor, would have been alive. Mr. Aubrey would still have been dead because those guys had it in their head they wanted to kill him. But a lot of people would have been alive that have been dead by police. Police officers wouldn't be in jail, like the poor police officer in Minnesota because of her judgment and her training. The police officer in North Carolina wouldn't be facing charges, which he will be, probably. This is the problem. not only for you African Americans, but for the entire society. You have to sit down and get together and straighten this out. You have to eliminate who you are and create what you want to be. And how many times do I have to tell you? Do I have to bring Mr. Paul Harvey back from the dead and have him tell you? Sitting in for Paul Harvey, this is your favorite alien and Bubba. Good day.